Well, welcome. My name is Matt. I'm glad that you're here. If this is your first time with us, welcome. And we have campuses online right now. People are joining us, and at Vincennes and at Princeton. And we have exciting news about what's going on at our Princeton campus. For a while, they've been meeting at the Showplace Cinema, just a rented facility in the movie theater. And just this last week, we were able to purchase a building just on the northeast section of the square in Princeton. And if you know, Princeton is going through kind of a revitalization of their square, and it's a prominent place, 17,000 square foot. You're going, that's what we got right there? Some of you are like, I think I've been there. That used to be called the Silver Spur. That was a nightclub, right? It was. And it's going to become a church. Yeah, for darkness to the light. Yeah. It has some really amazing features where we can turn it into a congregation that will be able to house about 300 on a Sunday morning, just in one service, and children's ministries that are going to have beautiful environments. And so, like the buildings you see at Washington and Vincennes, it's going to be that immaculate and that nice. And so, we'll be kind of rehabbing that and putting some money into it, because we want everyone to have a place that they feel that they can welcome friends and family to, and they can be excited about, but also proud of as well. We think there's something valuable to that, where you can walk into a building and say, isn't this nice? And it honors and respects who our God is, and that's a creator, and our God is deserving of things that are beautiful and well done. And so Princeton, we're excited for you. We're excited for the crew there as steps are to be made. Hopefully in maybe fall that opens up, and they have a permanent place to call home in Princeton, at least for 3 years until they outgrow it. And that's kind of the way things have been rolling. And you guys know that feeling as you're being pinched in here at this service. And let me just give you an opportunity, though I'm not pushing anybody out. We have services at 8 o'clock and 11 also. And I know you've heard that we're going to be offering a fourth service, and we are. That's going to be probably Sunday at 6 p.m., but the time and date of that is to be determined, and it's going to be after Easter services. And so we have about another 8 to 12 more weeks of this. And everyone loves a crowded restaurant until they don't love a crowded restaurant, And when you're new and you walk into a crowded restaurant, it's a bit intimidating. And so if you just want to think of it from the standpoint of someone new walking into a building, trying to find a place to seat, oftentimes walking in late because they're trying to get kids in, let's try our best to make some room. And I know you're like, seriously? Yeah, seriously. Let's all do our part to make our room and make it a less amount of speed bumps as possible to get to Jesus. How about that? Let's not put speed bumps in people's ways, and let's let them be able to find a place that's welcoming and loved. And if that means that we have to sacrifice for 12 weeks or a year or a lifetime to or to find another service, man, I'd love for you to do that. 8 o'clock or 11 has some seats available. We're doing this because we're in the series called Be the Light. It's just a reminder that we're to be light in the darkness. And there are people that are living in darkness, so to speak. And that term darkness is really brought out biblically when it means that they're not connected to God, and their life is not based on the foundations of who Christ is, and they're not experiencing the hope and the grace and the mercy and the forgiveness and all the beautiful things that God provides for us in a world that seems to be dimming out slowly and that is filled with trouble. And we're called to be the light of the world in this world. And we've challenged that we should love intentionally. Today we're going to talk about inviting boldly, and next week we're going to talk about speaking courageously. And in this last week, we had learned that there was a story of a guy named Levi whose life was radically changed when he got to the feet of Jesus. He was living in darkness. He was a notorious sinner. He was disrespected and despised in his community. And he had influence with people in prominent positions who were also crooks and cheats and liars. And so all the thieves kind of ran in a circle together. Jesus comes into Levi's life, gives him a new identity, even has to give him a new name, because that's what Jesus does. He gives you a full new identity. And he calls him Matthew. Matthew becomes a sincere follower of Jesus. And one step that he wants to take before he follows Jesus into the light, he wants to tell all of his friends that are still in the dark about who Jesus is. And so he does what he knows how to do best, and he throws a giant party. And in that giant party, he invites all of these notoriously bad people in the community who have bad reputations, because he wants to get them to the feet of Jesus. And he wants his friends who are living in the darkness to discover the light of Christ like he's discovered. And of course, in the midst of that group, in that crowd, are a bunch of religious, pious, elite, nose up in the air, arrogant people. They think they know all about God, but they know nothing about God. And so they're there just to put shame and scorn on people that are actually seeking and saving the lost. and they're called Pharisees and Sadducees, and they must have thought they meant well, but they weren't doing well. And they said, why would you do such a thing, Jesus? Why would you hang out with such notorious people? Why would you go into someone's darkness? And do you remember what Jesus says? He says, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, it's the sick. I've not come to call the righteous, I've come to call the sinner. And that's the reason for this series, is because I think there's a lot of us who have found themselves in the light, and we forgot about those that are in the darkness. Some of you have been in the light for so long, you have forgot what it feels like to live in darkness. You forgot about the despair. You forgot about having no hope on Monday. You forgot about that all the bombardment of the news that hits you and the world's crisis is overwhelming you, and you think that everything's going to come to an end in just a moment's notice, and there's nothing more. You forgot what it's like not to have true meaning in life or true purpose in life. You forgot what it's like not to experience forgiveness so that you can extend forgiveness, or experience God's love so you can show God's love even to your greatest enemy. You forgot all about that. And so this is just a reminder, a hearkening back, why we do what we do at Bethany and who we are as Christians. We're to be the light in a darkened world, because Christ has come not to call the healthy, but to call on the sick. And the challenge last week was to pray. Remember? Like, who are those 5 people that you're close to? Some are close, some are far away, some are enemies in the middle. And who are those people that God can lay on my heart so I can pray specifically about somebody that really needs me to be the light in their darkness? And I hope you did that this last week. I hope you prayed, and I hope you prayed specifically that God would lead someone on your heart that you could be the light into their darkness. I'm friends with a family that has one of their family members that they absolutely love, who was living in darkness for decades. His name is Jim. Jim is the father and the husband in this family. And Jim would come to church occasionally with his wife and kids, but never consistently. And you might have someone like that in your family. He never gave Christ a second thought, never really did anything with the church except for when he was nagged by his wife to come, or felt guilty about not coming on Easter or Christmas, and Jim would show up. But Jim was a hardworking guy. I mean, he loved his family. There's no denying that. He would work hard for them. He was a welder. And he put in his time, and man, he worked hard and gave his family a good living. And we'd even have some money afterwards to have a few beers or more every single night. And that's who Jim was. Just a hard guy, kind of that teddy bear on the inside, but scary bear on the outside, you know? And I love those kind of guys because, you know, deep down, those guys are kind of like, they want to push everybody away. But when you get to know them, they're just as soft and as kind as possible. That was Jim. And he finally retired a few years ago. And his family, who had been praying for his salvation, wondered what would become of him, because his purpose in life seemed to be just living to work and living to kind of have that blow off steam at the end of the night and have a few beers. And they didn't know what life was going to be like for him. So they prayed and prayed and prayed. They moved to the Pacific Northwest and got away from all their friends and started a new life there. And I found out that Jim had started going to church with his wife. And then we were excited about that, of course, but then a few months later, we just found out that Jim had given his life to Jesus Christ. And that family has been praying for almost 30 years for Jim to come to Jesus. Don't forget the power and the importance of prayer as it comes into the life of those that are living in darkness. You be praying for those that are in darkness. Now just imagine if Jim's family stopped praying for him at 20 years or 25 years. What if they just said, well, there's no hope here. He's been in darkness for too long. He doesn't seem redeemable. He doesn't seem to want to accept Jesus. He seems to have pushed Jesus away. Let's just stop praying for him. Friends, let's not forget that the things that we're dealing with are not just of issues of flesh and blood, but also things that go beyond that, issues of spiritual darkness that live in people's lives. And because there's spiritual darkness there, we need God's Spirit to remove those things, soften some hearts, give some eyes to maybe the gospel for the first time, and some ears that are attentive to the gospel. Don't stop praying for those that are in the darkness. Hey, and don't stop inviting them. That was the other challenge, right? Let's invite them, and let's be bold in our invitation to get them into the presence of Jesus. And we said, if you were like Levi and you were come to Jesus, who would you throw a big party for, and who would you be on your invite list that was lost but needed to be found? Because Jesus says a declaration of us. He says that he's the light, but we are also like little lights. And Matthew chapter 5, Jesus had taught this sermon. He said, you are the light of the world. Now, a lot of us would think, well, the church is, or maybe a certain ministry of the church is. No, Jesus emphasizes it, and he says, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill can't be hidden, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, you should let your light, not just the church, not just a ministry of the church. You personally should let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. And some of you have a real advantage of doing that. You haven't been in the light very long. And you have the advantage because you're still connected to some dark places and to some dark people. You're saying, well, how's that an advantage? It's an advantage because there's a lot of us who aren't connected in those ways. As a matter of fact, there's probably some Christians I'm speaking to right now. You can't think of someone living in darkness because you're not close to anybody in darkness. You can't think of any dark places because you haven't been a part of dark places in a very long time. But some of you who are just still new in the faith, you're still connected to those things. But let me give you a word of caution as there's a word of opportunity. The word of caution is you're going to have to set some parameters up. Because those folks that you were once associated with, or those places that you were once involved with, that you're no longer anymore because you're in the light, are a temptation still. And you could easily be pulled back in and get back into darkness just as quickly as you came into the light. And what I'm saying is, you know that little song, "This Little Light of Mine, I'm going to let it shine," right? Let's not let Satan blow it out. Let's not extinguish it on our own. Let's not hide it when we're in dark areas. Let's just let our light shine before men so that they see our good deeds and praise our Father in heaven. And let's never downplay the power and the importance of a simple invitation to invite those in darkness to come and to be in the presence of a place like this with people like you in the presence of our God in a church service. There's power in an invitation. Just think about it for a second. My wife and I, we met at a restaurant that our friends had invited us to. A friend of hers invited her, a friend of mine invited me, and we were at the same table together. And that simple yes to that invitation at that restaurant, it connected us and it changed our life forever. Just the simple power of an invite. I didn't know what I was saying yes to, had no idea what I was getting myself into. In 1999, I arrived here at Bethany in April of 99, spent the summer helping the youth, and then about midway through the fall, the invitation was given to me to be the lead pastor of Bethany Christian Church. Now, I had no idea how that was going to change my life and change the life of this congregation. There's just a power in an invitation. Let's not downplay the power of an invitation. One of these baptisms that you just saw on the screen, I asked one of those young ladies how it is that she started coming to Bethany Christian Church, and she said, well, a neighbor had invited her. A neighbor had discovered that she was kind of in a dark place and shown the light of Christ into her life, invited her to Bethany, and she was baptized into Christ here just last week. And I asked her, well, who's the neighbor? And she told me who the neighbor was. I went and found the neighbor. I said, well, who invited you to Bethany Christian Church? And she said, well, about 2 years ago, some people in our congregation invited her, and it was some core people of our congregation that had been here for, as old as the hills, I guess. And I was pumped, man. I thought, here's these folks that have been a part of Bethany for so long, and they're still inviting. They know the power of an invite, and it's like a chain reaction, isn't it? They invited their friend invited their neighbor, and their neighbors all come to Christ. Think about what the power of an invitation could have as it relates to your family and the family tree, how it could be changed if you just invite some people in to experience the light of Jesus Christ. Hey, you probably see one of these movies before, Willy Wonka, Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate, however you want to summarize it, it all is the same thing, isn't it? And whether it's the old version or the new version or the book, it all deals with Willy Wonka, who finds out that there's spies in his factory who are stealing his recipes, and he kicks everybody out of the factory, but somehow is still able to make the chocolates and the candies. And everybody in the community wants to know what's going on in that factory. They haven't been in it for years, and they want to know what's happening in there. What is going on? How can such good things come out of it when no one seems to know what's going on in there? And so Willy Wonka releases those golden tickets, and people come in and they experience the factory, and they are amazed about what takes place. But they were invited to the factory. Hey, guys, you may not be aware of this, but there's a lot of people that drive by Bethany Christian Church at Washington, Vincennes, and Princeton, and they see the parking lots full. They drive by Washington, and they're stopped by our police officers, and they're wondering, why does everybody want to go in there? What's going on in there on Sunday mornings? What's going on in there? And your invitation, so to speak, is that golden ticket. Because I've discovered that there are people that are just waiting to be invited. They're not going to invite themselves. They're not going to step in here under their own accord. They're just waiting for you to love them enough to simply invite them into this place, because they've been wondering for a long time, what goes on in there? And I think that just comes right from the teachings of Jesus, just inviting people in to experience the light. This is what Jesus did. You get into the calling of Philip. Philip was a disciple. Jesus looked at Philip and said, "You come and follow me." And Philip immediately followed Jesus. But Philip had some friends. He had some friends that were in the darkness. One of his friends was Nathanael. And Nathanael, he looked at and he said, "Hey, would you come and see?" That's the verbiage that he said, that Philip said to Nathanael. Come and see Jesus. Don't you love that? Come and see. Come and witness this firsthand. Experience Jesus for yourself. Come from the darkness to the light. Now, Nathanael must have had some apprehension to him because he laughs at the invitation. And the invitation's given, but he laughs at the invitation. He mocks Jesus and he mocks the invitation. You're always going to have friends. You're going to have family members that you love a lot. That when you invite them into a place like this or you invite them to experience Jesus, they're just going to laugh at you. They're going to mock Jesus. They're going to mock your faith. They're going to mock you for even asking. But it finally gets the better of Nathanael, and he comes to Jesus, and his life is radically changed because he comes and sees Jesus for himself, and he becomes a sincere follower of Jesus. He becomes one of the 12 disciples. Let's never underestimate the power of an invitation because Jesus never did. Jesus invited Philip. He invited his disciples. He invited notorious people that he thought needed salvation. But society thought they could never be saved. Now, who in your life right now do you think can never be saved? Who in your life right now have you already written off? You stopped praying for? You stopped inviting? Who is that? Jesus looked at a notorious sinner named Zacchaeus. The world had pushed him aside so much that he had to climb a tree to get a glance of Jesus. He was a short guy, but the crowd also pushed him out. And Jesus looked at Zacchaeus up in that tree and he said, "Zacchaeus, hurry down right now because I want to have lunch at your house. I'm coming to your place." Now, only Jesus can get away with inviting himself over to your house. I tell my kids, don't invite yourself over to anybody's house. Don't do that. Wait for the invitation. Jesus is like, "I'm coming to your place. You don't know me. I don't know you, but I'm coming." And Zacchaeus was like, "Hey, that's cool. No one ever wants to come to my house. People don't like me. So come on in, Jesus." And we don't know what took place. We don't know the conversation necessarily, but we know that whatever was discussed between he and Jesus, Zacchaeus radically changed. He repented of his sins. He was a tax collector that stole and cheated and robbed. And he said, "I'm going to give that money back. I'm going to pay people back and give them even more based on interest. And I'm going to come and I'm going to follow Jesus. I'm going to show people that I've radically changed my life because Jesus has shined light into my darkness." Why did that happen? How did that happen? Jesus invited him into his life. Jesus said, I want to be a part of your world. I want to be a part of your life. It was a bold invitation. And some of you are going to have to learn to get bold in your invitations. Whether that is having people who are in darkness come and experience the light of your home, or having people who are in darkness experience the light of this church, or maybe you inviting yourself into their darkness so that you can be a glimmer of hope, of light to them. And Jesus had told us that the Son of Man came not to look for, the Son of Man rather came to look for and save people who are lost. And who are you looking for? Because Jesus had shown us how he went about inviting people. He looked, he listened, and he loved. Looked, listened, and loved. And that's the application I want to give to you today. So if you walk out of here knowing anything, there's value, there's importance, there's power in invitation, and we simply just need to look and listen and love people as we extend that invitation. And Jesus in Luke 15, he had these series of stories that talk about the importance that lost people have to God. And he told it in stories that are called parables, earthly stories, heavenly meaning. He said there's the story of the lost sheep. Shepherd loses the sheep and he leaves the 99 to go chase that one. There's value in that sheep. And then he heightens the lostness as it relates to financial wealth or something that's dear to the heart. And he says, there's a lady that lost a coin. You're going, well, it's just a coin. To her, it was like a wedding ring. She had lost her engagement or wedding ring, and she searched the house looking for that wedding ring. Women, you wouldn't stop searching for the house until you found that wedding ring. It was so important, not just the value of it, but the sentimental value of it. And then Jesus says there's that third story about the father who loses the son. So lost sheep, lost coin, and lost son. And Jesus heightens it up, and all those stories are about the lengths that God would go to look for people who are lost. And so we know that God is looking for the lost. Jesus is looking for the lost, and that we need to be looking for the lost. As a matter of fact, Jesus had so much empathy for lost people. In Matthew chapter 23, he looks down at the city of Jerusalem, and he looks at all these people that are living without purpose and meaning, living without God's grace, living in the darkness of their sins, and Jesus begins to weep. He begins to weep for them. He doesn't call them out for their sins. Necessarily, he begins to cry and to weep and say, how I wish I could just gather you up. How I wish I could just invite you in and welcome you in and to experience me. Now, when is the last time that you had so much empathy for someone that was trapped in darkness that you began to weep for them? That you were just overwrought with emotion and empathy because you realized that you're in the light and they're in the darkness, and your heart was just begging God that they would come and experience Jesus. And maybe you've just never thought about it this way, but there's people that can't find their way to Jesus. And they need you to be the light, to invite them to Christ so that they can get to God. Jesus says, I am the way, and I am the truth, and I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And just look for those that are disconnected from God. And that's how Jesus did. He just looked for those that were disconnected from God. He was wrung out with emotion and empathy, and he cried out to God that they would be saved. And this is the most opportune time to do this right now, to invite someone boldly. You know, Easter's coming up here real soon. People will say yes to an invitation to an Easter service. We're going to have services on Saturday and services on Sunday. I guarantee you, if you find someone that you've looked hard enough and you found that they're in darkness, if you said, would you join us for an Easter service? The answer, about 90+% of the time, is going to be, yeah, I'll go with you to Easter. And so you look for those that are lost. Jesus not only looked, but he also listened to those that were lost. So listen to those that you're hanging around. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to what kind of things they're projecting. It's usually not hopeful things. It's things that they feel like hurt's on its way, or they're in the middle of hurt themselves. In John chapter 4, Jesus listened to a woman that he was drawing water out of a well with. And she came at noontime, and Jesus noticed that no other women were around, just her. All the other women came at the cool of the day to draw water. She came at the heat of the day. That interests Jesus. And Jesus started to talk to her and listen to her. And she pretended like she was the most spiritual, most righteous person on the face of the earth. She didn't know who she was she didn't know who she was talking to. And Jesus looked at her and said, You are none of those things. As a matter of fact, your relationship with God is dried up. Your relationship is like as dry as an empty well. And Jesus said, you need living water. And that interests her. And she asked the question, who's the living water? Jesus says, I'm the living water. You need me in your life. Now that startled her, because in her darkness, she didn't know what to do with that light. And Jesus called out the darkness that was within her. She was a woman that was caught up with multiple husbands, either had multiple husbands or was having multiple affairs. We don't know which one. Jesus called it out in her and said, listen, there's some sin in your life, there's darkness in life, and you got to get this right. She was so taken back by that she ran into town, gathered all of her friends and said, there's a guy out here that knows everything I've ever done. You got to come out and hear him. And she brought the townspeople to come and hear Jesus out, come and see Jesus, because Jesus just listened. Heard what she had to say, started on the knock of the door of her heart, and it did some rattling and shook her enough to say, this guy's important. He knows who I am. He's listened to me. He's heard me, and now I'm going to listen to him. I took our Vincent's team out to lunch this last week, and there's about 5 of us that were gathered around the table, and one of our youth pastors at Vincent's, he was telling us about how he's so excited, he and his wife, for their new first baby, and as he's telling us the story, and he's filled with all sorts of excitement, another team member just kind of accidentally cut him off and started to tell a story that was completely different and off subject matter. You've been there right in the conversation when someone's telling a story and somebody else cuts them off, and you're like, but he was saying something, but you're too kind to even say anything, so you just let that story go, and I'm listening, and then one of our other staff members, Delaney Baker, who runs our First Impressions at Vincent, she finds an appropriate stop in the conversation. She looks over at our youth pastor and says, now you were telling us a story. I want to hear what you have to say. And I love the perceptiveness in her to say, you got cut off. And I know what it's like to be cut off. I've had someone not listen to me before. And you feel less of a person, like you feel that you're not wanted and your story's not respected. And what she was telling him that day was, I want to hear your story because I want to hear from you. And sometimes as Christians, we just think we got so much to say, right? So much to say into people's darkness, so much to say about hope or forgiveness or love. We got so much to say. And we've just stopped listening to the people that are around us in kind of our sphere of influence, our five, about what they are saying. And I just want to grab some ways in which we can just start to listen very intently and intentionally. Andy Stanley, who is a very famous pastor, he gives 3 things that people say that we need to be listening to, that when they say these things, it gives us a great opportunity to invite them into Jesus. Like when people say, I'm not prepared for this. You ever hear people say, like, I'm going to college, I just know if I'm ready for this. Or they're starting a new job, I don't know, I'm a little bit nervous about this. Or maybe a mother who's having a baby for the first time, I just don't know if we're ready. That's the perfect opportunity to say, it sounds like you're worried. Would you want to come with me to church? Or would you want to experience Jesus? Or tell them about who Jesus is, that he's the God of tomorrow. He's the God that holds things tomorrow. Or how about this? I'm not from here. You met those people that are new in the neighborhood or new at the workplace or new in the school system, and they're just trying to get connected. They've found themselves in a new place, but new places oftentimes mean new opportunity to folks. If you've ever moved, you found this to be true. New places means new opportunity. You can break free from some of the stuff that you were connected to at your old place and start fresh. In many ways, when people want to start fresh, they want to start fresh in faith as well. And so that's an opportunity. When you find out that someone's new to a place, you can say, hey, can I introduce you to some people that I absolutely love, near and dear? They're a part of my church, or they're a part of my small group, or we're having dinner on a Friday night, and I want you to be invited with you and your family so you can be around some people that are great people. And they may not know that you're inviting them into a Christian circle, but that's exactly what you're doing. All you have to do is listen. I'm new here. I'm not prepared for this. Or how about this? Things aren't going well for me. You know, we hear that every day, don't we? Hey, how are things for you? Either you get the reply back that's just off the cuff, that is fine, but you can always tell in the way they project fine if it's really fine or not, right? Sooner or later, it doesn't matter if it's a work friend or a family member or even, I heard I was in the lumber store the other day, and I obviously, these 2 guys had not been with each other for, I don't know, years. They worked at the coal mine together. And one of them says, hey, you still at the mine? The guy says, yeah, still there. Well, what's it like? And the guy just started to complain about the mine. He started complaining about the job. And they started to complain about a boss that was still there. And one guy said, well, that's why I left. I left because of so-and-so. And, they had no idea I was listening over in aisle 5, right? They had no clue what was going on and heard all their grievances. And they just, it was one complaint after another. You want to know why? Because we're good at complaining. Even to strangers, we're good at complaining. And so all you have to do is listen. When things are, my marriage isn't going well. It's hard raising kids. Our finances seem to be stuck right now in the red, and we can't seem to get into the black. What an awesome opportunity to introduce them to a God of hope, right? Not to a God who's going to solve all their problems. That's not who our God is. But a God who can bring you peace even in your problems and peace during the middle of your storm. You have the power through that invite to boldly and courageously invite somebody to experience Jesus who has never experienced Jesus before. I love what Roberta Kuhn had to say about how Christians can speak into someone's darkness. She said, let's give them what so few people will. Our time, our hearts, our listening ears. I've discovered that people will most often come to love us before they love our Savior. That's true. They'll come to love us before they come to love our Savior, which means they have to put trust in you. And so how does trust come? Trust comes from just listening and interacting and accepting them as a person and having some respect for them. And I wonder how many times I've just blown through my schedule and not listened to people. Not listened to the cashier as she complains about how bad her feet hurt. Not listen to my wife, not listen to my kids, not listen to those that I do ministry with, or listening to you all, or just the strangers that we meet in society, or the friends that we have in our places of hobby and fun. We just don't listen. We just kind of rambunctiously go through our day, and we just check off our to-do list, and we just try to get our day accomplished, and we've just stopped listening. What happens is, if we stop listening, then we don't get the opportunity to speak. They're not going to listen to us. And the Bible says there's going to come an opportunity when you're going to have to speak. 1 Peter chapter 3:15 says it like this, but in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. He says, always be prepared. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope that you have. That's in Jesus. But do this with gentleness and respect. So let's look for those that are disconnected. Let's listen to those that are far from God and are in the darkness. But here's the last one Jesus taught us. let's love those that we meet with. Let's be intentional about love. And there's some people that you meet with that you don't like, I guarantee it. There'll be a boss tomorrow that you'll have to meet with that you don't like, a manager that you meet with that you don't like, a friend that is a coworker, but that, they get under your nerves and somehow they find a way to kind of prick you the wrong way. Maybe it is somebody even in your own household, and you would regard them as the enemy. Let me just step back to say, those people in your life that are hard to love are not the enemy, but they are probably being attacked by the enemy. And our enemy is Satan himself. Remember, Satan is the thief. He comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And he's trying to kill, steal, and destroy their dreams and their hopes. And they're living from a place of darkness, so they're speaking from a place of darkness. Jesus says that we're to love everybody, even love our enemy. As a matter of fact, Jesus says, you will be known as Christians by one definition. You know what it is? Your love. That's how Jesus says it. He says, a new command I give you, love one another as I've loved you. So you must love one another. That's sacrificial. That means that you're going to walk the extra mile, turn the other cheek. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you, let's just say it out loud, if you love one another. And I know it's not always easy to love those that are hard to love. But with Christ's Spirit within us, we can pull that off. And we have to remember, they're not our enemy. Satan is our enemy. And Satan is keeping them, in one sense, trapped in darkness, and their thoughts and their words are coming, and their actions are coming from a place of darkness and not a place of light. And you can be the hope and the light into their darkness by showing off some good deeds to them so that they can glorify your Father in heaven. I don't know who that is. It could be your neighbor. It could be a grandmother. It could be a boss that's hard to love. It could be a spouse, a son, or a mother, or a father. But I know this. Not everyone responds positively to Jesus. And not everybody responds positively to the church. And not everybody responds positively to Christians. But everybody responds positively to love. My grandmother, who has passed away, this is my mom's mom, she was a widow for 30 or 40 years, and she always had the company of dogs, and she had these two dogs that she had the longest, and Cuddles and Sparky. They were just a couple of mutts, but she absolutely loved them, and they were kind of her everything. And because they were her everything, she had heard, I don't know, maybe read it in the paper. I don't know where she got the advice, but if you gave your dog castor oil, it would give them longevity of life, better eyesight, healthier breath, and a better coat. I don't know what she heard, but she decided that's what she was going to do. And so, routine-based, every day, she'd go to her silverware drawer, and those dogs would hear that silverware shake, and they knew what was coming. And she'd go to the drawer or the cabinet, and she'd get that castor oil, and she'd shut the door, and those dogs would kind of run away. She'd have to go find them. They'd hide behind the recliner or just try to run outside, and she'd have to grab them and pin them down and give them a spoonful of castor oil, and they would fight, and they would whimper, and they would claw. But every single day, it was the same old routine to get that castor oil down their throat. But one day it turned out differently. Those dogs fought back. Sparky and Cuddles fought back, and they kicked that castor oil right out of her hand and knocked the spoon out, and she was just so upset, and she went to go grab a rag, and that's when she turned around and saw Cuddles and Sparky just licking the castor oil off the floor. She was like, what's the deal? I know what the deal is. They didn't want that stuff shoved down their throat. But once they got a lick of it, they were like, this is good, but I just don't want to shove down my throat. I think there's some people in dark places right now that experience a little bit of the light, and they don't want it shoved down their throat. They don't care how much Bible knowledge you got. They don't want to debate you about creationism, evolution. They don't want to debate you about theological issues. That's not what's on their mind all the time. They just don't want religion, Christianity pushed onto them. They know it's good. So how about you just, in a loving way, you look for those that are lost, listen to those that are disconnected from God, and start to love them with respect and gentleness, just as Christ would love us. Not pushing God onto them, but showing who God is. By being the light, showing them your good deeds, so that they'll praise You'll be a blessing to them, right? That's not shoving anything down anybody's throat. You'll be a blessing to them, and they'll praise your Father in heaven. I mean, it's just the wake-up call to be more intentional about loving, more bold about inviting. In the back of our rooms at all of our campuses, there's just these little baskets that have glow sticks in them. And, I don't know what you want to do with them, but they're to represent that you're to be the light in this dark world. And for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be handing these out just because maybe you have someone that this needs to be an identifying piece of someone in your life that you need to be the light of Christ into their darkness. And I don't know, you can put this on the, do we call them stick shift knobs in the car anymore? What's that even called anymore? You can put it on your rearview mirror. I don't know where you want to put it. Someplace where you're constantly looking at the dashboard, or maybe by your bedstand, and maybe you just want to break it open, and that is a constant reminder of the light that you need to be in this darkness. You can have a rave with it. I don't care what you do with it. As long as it helps to remind you that you are the light of the world. And a city on a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it in a bowl. No, they let their light shine. So it gives light to the entire household. So in the same way, let your light shine before men so that they may see your good deeds and that they can praise our Father in heaven. Listen, look, and love those who are in the darkness. Let's pray together. Father, we were once in the darkness, and we thank you for those that listened and looked for us and loved us in our dark spots. May we continue to do the same. We know the chain reaction. We know the power of an invitation. May we be bold with it. And Father, as we look today to do this better, lay those on our heart that we know need us right now. They need us. They need us to listen. They need us looking for them, to seek out where they're at and who they are, and they need us to love them. They need the light of Christ in their life. And as we take these glow sticks home, may it just be, every time we see it, may it just be a constant reminder of that person. May their name appear in our mind. May we pray for them every day. May we become like you, searching and seeking the lost. And we pray these things in Christ's name.